This is a Victorian literature lesson from the Harris Federation. As it's in the format of a video, you can pause and rewind anytime you like. There will be tasks for you to complete, so do pause when you need to complete them. Make sure your sound is turned up, as there will be narrations for you to follow, as well as readings. Hello and welcome to the next lesson on Oliver Twist. Last lesson we read an extract and analysed some of the words and the meaning. Today we are going to do some creative writing and we're going to focus specifically on sentence types. Let's start by working out what you do and don't know about sentence types. First of all, on your paper, write out what each of these mean. If you're not sure, don't worry, you'll know by the end of the lesson. What are simple sentences? They are sentences which have only one clause, with a single subject and a verb. Let me give you some examples. Oliver approached the table. The boys took their places. The bowls never wanted washing. Each of these sentences have a subject and a verb. The subject, Oliver, boys, bowls. The subject is the thing or person that does something. The doing or action word is the verb. Approached, took, wanted. Each of these have a subject and a verb. Now let's try making our own. Spend some time now writing your own simple sentences. Pause the video whilst you do this. I asked you before, why might you use simple sentences in a text? Let's look at the simple sentences in the Oliver extract that we looked at last lesson. There was a general start. The bowls never wanted washing. That boy will be hung. Quite often, a writer will use simple sentences to stop the pace, to slow things right down, or to emphasise a certain event. Now that you understand simple sentences, we can move on to compound sentences. A compound sentence is two simple sentences joined by a coordinating conjunction. Here's an example. The evening arrived, so the boys took their places. The bowls never wanted washing, but the boys did. Oliver approached the table and he asked for more. Each of these have a coordinating conjunction. An easy way to remember these is the mnemonic fanboys. So a coordinating conjunction is for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. Coordinating conjunctions. So the first sentence, the evening arrived, so the boys took their places. That's the coordinating conjunction. The bowls never wanted washing, but the boys did. But is the coordinating conjunction. In the last sentence, the and is the coordinating conjunction. You'll notice that either side of the coordinating conjunction have a simple sentence. So, a simple sentence, then a coordinating conjunction, then a simple sentence makes a compound sentence. I want you to write your own compound sentences now. Spend some time thinking about your sentences and make sure that you have your coordinating conjunction in between two simple sentences. If you get stuck, use the red box to help you. And don't forget your fanboys, which are your coordinating conjunctions. Our last sentence is complex sentence. A complex sentence is a sentence with a main clause and a subordinate clause. Don't get confused by the word clause, it just means part of a sentence. Here are three sentences. Alarmed by his own bravery, Oliver approached the master. Desperate for more food, Oliver asked for more. Wild with hunger, the orphans huddled around the table. Each of these have a main clause and a subordinate clause. The main clause is in purple and it makes sense on its own. It's actually a simple sentence. And the subordinate clause is the additional information that would not make sense as a lone sentence. In order to understand complex sentences, it's really important that you understand the difference between a main clause and a subordinate clause. I want you to write down these sentences and I want you to underline or highlight the main clause and the subordinate clause in two different colours, or one underlined and one circled, so that you can see the difference. Now it's time for you to write your own complex sentences. I'd like 10 sentences, please. And remember to use a main clause and a subordinate clause. Something quite sophisticated that you can do is move your clauses for effect. Here are some examples. Wild with hunger, the orphans huddled around the table. Wild with hunger is the subordinate clause, and in the red sentence is at the beginning. The green sentence, the orphans huddled around the table, wild with hunger. The blue sentence, the orphans, wild with hunger, huddled around the table. So you could have the subordinate clause at the beginning of the sentence, like the red one, at the end of the sentence, like the green one, or in the middle, like the blue one. What do you think the emphasis is in each sentence? Now have a go at moving clauses for effect yourself. Here you've got 3 sentences. Paralysed with fear, the boys sat silently. Desperate for more food, Oliver asked for more. Alarmed by his own bravery, Oliver approached the master. Each of these can be written 3 different ways, with the subordinate clause at the beginning, middle and end of the sentence. Try writing them out in all the ways that they could be. There's a challenge task for you also. We're going to double check now if you've understood the definitions from the lesson. In the orange box, you can see the terms that I asked you about at the beginning of the lesson, that we've covered throughout the lesson. Can you match up each of the orange terms to the correct definition in the black and white boxes? Spend some time doing this, and when you've finished, go back over the PowerPoint to check if you were correct. Now you're going to put everything that you have learned into practice. You're going to write an account of the event that we read about yesterday, but from the perspective of Oliver. So imagine you are Oliver, and I want you to write 2 or 3 paragraphs about what has happened in the workhouse. Don't forget to vary your sentences and show off everything that you've learned in this lesson.
The room in which the boys were fed was a large stone hall, with a copper at one end, out of which the master, dressed in an apron for the purpose, and assisted by 1 or 2 women, ladled the gruel at meal times. Of this festive composition, each boy had 1 porringer, and no more, except on occasions of great public rejoicing, when he had 2 ounces and a quarter of bread besides. The bowls never wanted washing. The boys polished them with their spoons till they shone again. And when they'd performed this operation, which never took very long, the spoons being nearly as large as the bowls, they would sit staring at the copper with such eager eyes, as if they could have devoured the very bricks of which it was composed, employing themselves, meanwhile, in sucking their fingers most assiduously, with the view of catching up any stray splashes of gruel that might have been cast thereon. Boys have generally excellent appetites. Oliver Twist and his companions suffered the tortures of slow starvation for 3 months. Alas, they got so voracious and wild with hunger that one boy, who was tall for his age, and hadn't been used to that sort of thing, for his father kept a small cookshop, hinted darkly to his companions that unless he had another basin of gruel, he was afraid he might some night happen to eat the boy who slept next to him, who happened to be a weakly youth of tender age. He had a wild, hungry eye, and they implicitly believed him. A council was held. Lots were cast who should walk up to the master after supper that evening and ask for more, and it fell to Oliver Twist. The evening arrived, and the boys took their places. The master, in his cook's uniform, stationed himself at the copper. His pauper assistants ranged themselves behind him. The gruel was served out, and a long grace was said over the short commons. The gruel disappeared. The boys whispered each other and winked at Oliver, while his next neighbours nudged him. Child as he was desperate with hunger and reckless with misery. He rose from the table, and advancing to the master, basin and spoon in hand, said, somewhat alarmed at his own temerity,
"Please, sir, I want some more."
The master was a fat, healthy man, but he turned very pale. He gazed in stupefied astonishment on the small rebel for some seconds, and then clung for support to the copper. The assistants were paralysed with wonder, the boys with fear.
"What?" said the master at length, in a faint voice.
"Please, sir,
Replied Oliver.
I want some more."
The master aimed a blow at Oliver's head with a ladle, pinioned him into his arms, and shrieked aloud for the beadle. The board was sitting in a solemn conclave, when Mr. Bumble rushed into the room in great excitement, and addressing the gentleman in the high chair, said,
"Mr. Limpkins, I beg your pardon, sir. Oliver Twist has asked for more."
There was a general start. Horror was depicted on every countenance.
"For more?" said Mr. Limpkins. "Compose yourself, Mr. Bumble, and answer me distinctly. Do I understand that he asked for more after he had eaten the supper allotted by the dietary? That boy will be hung," said the gentleman in the white waistcoat. "That boy will be hung."
"He did, sir," replied Mr. Bumble.
Nobody controverted the prophetic gentleman's opinion. An animated discussion took place. Oliver was ordered into instant confinement, and a bill was passed next morning on the outside of the gate, offering a reward of £5 to anybody who would take Oliver Twist off the hands of the parish. In other words, £5 and Oliver Twist were offered to any man or woman who wanted an apprentice to any trade, business, or calling.
Once you have reread and proofread your paragraphs, I want you to go through using 3 different colours and highlight in 3 different colours the 3 different sentence types like I have here. In green, I have simple sentences. In yellow, I have compound sentences, and in orange, I have complex sentences. I want you to do the same to make sure that you've used all 3.